Good morning, you bad, beautiful bitches, you. It is Wednesday morning. Look, I'm not a big reader, but we have our first author of the show, okay? Cillian Dunne, author of Death by Million Papercuts. Let's get into it, shall we?
Let's get into it.
Welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Our first Irishman as well, okay?
Yeah,
this is big. It's
a pleasure.
Yeah, where in Ireland are you from?
I am from Dublin.
Dublin.
Yeah.
That is, there's an old joke. You must be from Ireland because my penis be Dublin, I believe. Is the just to make everyone super uncomfortable in the room. Thank you so much for coming in, man.
Yeah,
this
thank
is
you for
gonna be
having me.
great. We were saying this off air. I'm a big accent guy. You might as well address this out of the gate because it's an itch I got to scratch early on. Okay, your accent, the Irish accent this time of year is beautiful, huh?
Yep.
I mean, that is. Why don't we just rapid fire? Don't even think about it. Just repeat after me. School. 33.
33.
Cool. School again.
School.
33.
33.
That's unbelievable. The 33 really just. One more time with the 33?
33.
That is, I love it. That is incredible. That's unbelievable. All right, so we'll get into the book first. I know you have a couple different ventures going. Yep. But the book, from what I've heard, based on a true story, right?
Yep.
And when were you like, okay, tell us a little bit about the story, but then also tell us a little bit about how did you get into the writing processes? Like, did you know you wanted to be an author always, or?
Yeah. So, first of all, this is like, I call this like my first like real book,
Yep.
but I've written 3 books.
Really?
I wrote 2 before this. My second book is currently being published with like a publisher in Alabama.
Wow.
So it's like a little bit out there. It's like kind of weird, but that's going to be released or like re-released this summer.
Yep.
But Papercuts was definitely my first like actual, I guess like feat as an author.
Yeah.
To put it like simply, it's the first thing that I've done that's like actually good.
Yeah.
But basically the story is this woman I was put in touch with. She was married to the headmaster of a very prestigious boarding school for like 30 years. And one day, the FBI came knocking on her door and they told her that her husband is being accused of sexual assault by 5 former students. So they asked her to work with the FBI against her husband without him knowing. So where the story gets like interesting is she kind of had to become like a spy within her own home.
Oh,
and
wow.
try to like take down her husband while not fully believing that he was capable of doing these things. Because she like knew him for 30 years. She like loved him to death. They had like 2 children who were like the same age as the girls that he assaulted.
Yeah.
So the way I like to describe it is like a Spotlight 2.0. So if you've seen the movie Spotlight, It's kind of like a mix between like Spotlight and Gone Girl.
Gotcha. And how did you, like, I guess let's go earlier days. Like, what got you into writing? And then how did you stumble upon this story? Because this story takes place where? It's in Boston,
It's in Boston, yeah. It's like a Boston story. Well, it's like more of like a New England story because some of the schools were like in Maine and like New Hampshire and shit. But the reason why I started writing was I've always been like obsessed with movies. Even, just when I was like wicked young, like I was a big movie guy.
Yeah.
I would watch 2 new movies every single day, like coming home from school.
Wow.
Yeah, like every single, and I like played soccer and
Coming
stuff.
home from where?
School.
Okay. It's the best. It's the best thing ever. Oh my God.
But I'll say it one more time. So I would come home from school.
There it is. I love it.
I would watch like 2 new movies a day. I would like prioritize it because I like just loved it so much.
Yeah.
And then I watched this one movie when I was like 18 called Midnight in Paris, which it's an awesome movie if you haven't seen it. But after watching it, I was like, oh Jesus, like I could do that. Like I could write a movie like that. So I just wrote like a 10-page like little story, sent it to my buddy. He was like, yeah, this is the worst thing I've ever read in my life. But I kind of like loved it. I got the bug.
Yeah.
So I was like 18, started writing, never stopped. And I technically wrote my first book when I was 22. But I just kind of like did it to do it because I like love doing it.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. So your brain must just be a fascinating world, huh? Just Narnia in there.
Yeah, it's crazy in there. It's I never stop thinking about stories.
That is, and then so this story in New England, true story.
Yeah.
What got you out of, okay, I'm gonna watch movies and then just kind of create more just nonfiction?
Yeah.
which means fake, I believe, right?
No, nonfiction
real?
is real.
Fuck! Oh, I was so confident that I was like, fiction is fake, nonfiction's. Wait, see, look at me, just
Yeah, nonfiction is like real, like a real story.
nonfiction,
and then
not fake.
yes,
Boom, there it is.
Excellent.
Shows you
Yeah.
how much I've been in the library. That is, wow. How did you go from watching movies to creating your own manifestos, if you will, to then like more investigational work?
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause was this your first like story analyzing actual cases and court documents? I'm sure. And
yeah, for sure. It was absolutely the first time. I think like the reason why like the mesh kind of happened is like I've always been kind of obsessed with like movie private investigators. I don't know why. Just like they're like my
murder mystery type stuff.
Yeah,
like crime in general.
yeah, like just in general, I was always just like drawn to those kind of movies. And when I heard this story, before I heard like the full thing, I heard like the Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
Just like a really high level overview, like a 30-second description of what happened to this woman. And I just saw an opportunity to be like, I can put on my private investigator hat and I can do this while also writing a book that has like a narrative story.
Right.
So
and how did you first hear about it?
I heard about it through a family member who
Okay.
had like worked with this woman back in the 80s.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
it was like the first like month or two of COVID or something. I was like living at home with my mom, and then this and then my mom was like, "Oh, you have to hear about like the story that I just heard." So she gave me like the Cliff Notes version, and I was like, "Holy shit! Like this is nuts."
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot about it until maybe like 2 years ago or something.
Yep.
And then I was just like sitting on my thumb, like doing absolutely nothing. and I was like, I might as well just write another book.
Yeah.
What do I have at my disposal to write about? And I remembered that story. So I reached out to her and yeah.
You knew the lady.
I had never met her.
Okay.
I guess I had when I was really, really young, but like I'd never actually met her as
Right.
like an adult.
And I got to assume by the time you reach out to her, this is probably years after all these, at the time, allegations took place, right?
It was probably like 7 years after the whole thing took place.
Was she a little, when you're like, hey, can I write a story about your actual life? Was she a little apprehensive? Like, how'd that conversation go?
Like a little bit apprehensive, but she had been approached before because, when all this was going on, it was like a spotlight report.
Yeah.
So after the Catholic Church after the Spotlight team investigated the Catholic Church, they investigated boarding schools.
Yeah.
And she was like a point of interest in this whole thing.
And what is the Spotlight team? Like this is in the 80s, is that right?
No, well, so these events occurred in like the 80s and the 90s.
Okay.
But in the like mid 2010s, there were so many allegations from like 1985 to like 2015.
Yeah.
Over a 30-year period, there were so many allegations. In fact, there were like between 200 and 400 allegations like overall. Wow. For a decent number of boarding schools. She was like a point.
And what were the allegations?
That there was at least one recorded case of sexual assault between a member of faculty at a boarding school and a student. Which, obviously, like sexual assault is an absolutely terrible thing, but the reason why this was kind of like terrifying and also like interesting as well is because like boarding schools, like especially back in the 80s and 90s, like the kids like couldn't leave.
Right.
And like they didn't have cell phones and stuff. So they couldn't, like if something happened to them, they like couldn't really get in contact with their parents or whatever.
Right.
And there was also like very few ways to like record, any sort of evidence or I don't know. It was just a lot harder to like prove that a teacher like did this, but like it happened all the time.
Wow. It almost reminds me of, you ever see, is it 1928? What's the, it's 1928, right? The Yellowstone series where they're...
dude, I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, you have to... I'm hoping that's the... Yeah, I think it is 1928 because it reminds me of... They have like border school... It's a border school for Catholics and it shows a lot of the like how strict the nuns are and like it's they specifically focus on like an all-girls boarding school. And yeah, is that right? It's 1923, excuse me. And it is... You have to watch. It's like an 8-episode series. Same guy that directed Yellowstone. But what you're describing is the first couple episodes of that start out where the nuns are like insane, super strict. The kids can't leave, It's like a 24-hour lockdown for these kids basically. And then it shows like the abuse side that the nuns do on these kids, and
Yeah.
just horrible, abuse cases.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So this spotlight team, this is is this a separate investigative bureau? Like, what is the spotlight team?
To my knowledge, for context, like I reached out to them asking for help on this book, and nobody helped me.
Oh wow! And the spotlight, they're based in Boston?
They're based in Boston. Yeah, they're
Wow.
like a special investigative team at the Boston Globe.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, and
a group of like reporters that'll go out in.
Exactly. Yeah.
okay.
And they only deal with like really high profile, like very special cases.
Right.
I don't blame them for not wanting to work with me. I was like, reaching out to them, being like, "Hey, I'm writing this book. Like, can you guys give me like stuff from your report?" And they were basically like, "Why the fuck would we do that?"
Do you think they were saying no to you because at the time was this a case that was like closed, and they didn't want to open up Pandora's box again?
I think it was like kind of closed, but like the door was like ajar. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like, because their Catholic Church thing, that was a closed case. But like, if somebody comes to them and says, "I have more evidence," they'll probably want to listen to it, because they poured so much of themselves into something so specific for so long that like, how could they not want to hear something? But they just didn't want to like help me without any credit for themselves, which is totally understandable.
And when they kind of shut the door in your face in terms of trying to help you, where do you go next? Is that when you contact the woman directly?
No, so I already had the woman kind of fully agreed to write the book, and I was just going to them for like extra help. So she gave me her story, everything like from the beginning to end, but it was all just one perspective.
Right.
So I wanted to go to the spotlight team, and there was only one guy that shut me down. Was the only guy I could get his contact info for.
Right.
And I told him what I was doing, but I didn't tell him who I was working with, because she wants to remain anonymous. Totally.
Okay.
Even in the book, she's not like...
You changed the name and stuff.
Changed the name.
Yep.
Yeah, because there are like lawsuits going on, and like she could get in trouble for this, and like I could potentially get in trouble for this. So kept it all anonymous. Wasn't able to give them any specifics, but they were basically just like, why would I want to like waste my time doing this, which is grand.
And what did your investigative work look like? Like, what was your day to day? Like, now you're like, okay, I have the permission from the lady who this all happened with to write this book. What's like day one look like for you?
Day one, so after I got her complete story, I tried to look for points in the story where I could build my knowledge that like, where kind of like, I guess I had like little knowledge on, because it was just her perspective. So I hired kind of like a private investigator.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it was actually really funny. There was this like Irish meetup event in LA where I live, and it's like only Irish people there for the most part.
My kind of party. Now we're talking. Wow!
You just be getting everyone to say words. All day.
Man, my pasty ass. I'd be like, bring it in, everybody! Wow.
Yeah. But it was funny, yeah. I was just walking around, kind of like introduced myself, and I was telling people about the book that I was only then kind of getting going on.
Right.
And I started chatting to this woman, and she's got this like really thick Boston accent. And I'm like,
I know those.
Yeah, it's like, you're from Boston, like I was born there, like, how you doing? And just chatting Boston and stuff. And then I was like, what do you do for work? What are you living out here for? And she's like, oh, I don't live here. I'm a private investigator back in Boston. And I'm like, you're fucking messing. Like, this is fate. So I hired her for like a week or something. It was not as cool as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Like, this woman, like, she just kind of went out there. I gave her like a few names. I gave her some schools. And I was like, can you just like look into like sexual assault or like any sort of cases for these schools? She went out, she gave me like a compiled report of like 20 pages or something. And I really just read through that. And I did that with several other private investigators that I actually didn't have to hire, because the woman had previously hired them to kind of like stalk her ex-husband and all this stuff. Yeah.
Do you hire a private investigator? Like, what is the cost of that?
It wasn't that expensive. It was like maybe for a week. There are different tiers.
Yep.
Yeah, there are different tiers.
It's so like a gym membership.
Yeah. So if you want them to do like, heavy PI work where they're like sitting in a car like outside of someone's apartment, like drinking coffee for 12 hours, it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Because you're just paying for their time.
Yeah,
but
right.
I didn't have that need, so I really just kind of like gave them names and said, just like find out whatever you can about these people.
Yeah.
And then she did. And a lot of that is just like, there are like specific, maybe like search or like websites that you can go to, and you kind of like search through like criminal records and all that sort of stuff. So, it wasn't expensive. I think I spent like maybe like 800 bucks. It was like 800 bucks for like 1 week of work, but I got a ton of stuff.
I was really hoping you'd give that to us in like pounds or whatever. The
euro.
Is it the euro?
Yeah.
Shows how cultured I am. Like, it was about, 1 ton,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, I can give you the figure in euro if you want. It was about 600 euro at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're learning. Huh. Not bad. Seems like a bargain.
Yeah, it was actually it was a
investigator.
bargain.
Yeah. Wow. Now, okay, let's go to main suspect, I should say, who's the husband in this book.
Yeah.
Where in the book does he come in? And I know the wife was like at first almost like sticker shocked, like this can't, like these allegations against my husband like cannot be true, because it's the husband who was accused of all these sexual acts. Is that right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And when did his name kind of come across your desk? And then when we were like, ooh, okay, this is like there's some factual evidence behind this.
Yeah. So so obviously the main reason why I started speaking to her was because of her husband and what he had done. So I was kind of fully aware of the allegations and whatnot. And then I started to sort of look into, there was one main allegation that the like woman that I worked with, she kind of gave me this detail, and I was just kind of like a dog chasing after like an ice cream truck. Just like fucking, I didn't know if I was going to get everything I needed.
Yeah.
But I was going after it. Like, and so I don't know. I heard all this stuff, and then I started to kind of go to town on research on him. But she was also brilliant as well, because during the kind of really rocky years of their relationship, like after, like just before she found out about the allegations, things were terrible with their relationship, because the interesting thing was he knew about the allegations for like a whole year before she did, which means that he knew that the FBI were after him and building a case against him, but he never told anyone. He just kept it all in.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he would act really erratically, like all this sort of stuff. And she took him to a couples therapist, but like not like a we're not having sex kind of thing. It was like my husband might be a psychopath, kind of thing.
Because what were the allegations were sexual assault against the students.
Yes.
And this would have been high school level students.
High school level students.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. And multiple students or?
Multiple.
Multiple, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy stuff. And he, this guy isn't the only one. Like this, there were 67 different boarding schools with a case like this. Yeah. So it's like absolutely nuts. But, she took him to like a couples therapist, and, maybe over the course of a few sessions, and this is how she told me, the therapist was like, okay, your husband has narcissistic personality disorder, but like a really heavy case, which essentially just means like he's a total sociopath.
Yeah,
who like can't really feel like remorse, or like he doesn't really like feel feelings for other people unless it like benefits himself.
Right.
So this woman, like God bless her, like she is really, really fucking brave for her to even just like talk about all this stuff. But yeah, she gave me a lot. Like she gave me a lot over the years, and she was kind of giving me like different milestones in a relationship where she should have noticed these red flags like build up, to kind of prove to her that her husband was like this kind of guy. But okay, so then as soon as she got to the point where she found out that her husband really just like physically couldn't like show remorse for like any action like this, then she started to like slowly drift away from him. But the way that he works is he uses her for like emotional fuel. And it's, it's not like a super common thing amongst men, but like there are like a portion of people that like do operate like this in their lives.
Right.
So it's really just like a power thing. And he started to kind of like mentally and emotionally drain her. So she would kind of have to kind of like bow down to like his every action and kind of like every decision that like he made, like she would just have to go along with. So so when she found out about these like accusations, she took her a little bit of time, but she eventually kind of like stood tall and fucking put on her boots, and she was like, I'm not taking this shit. Like, I'm protecting my daughters. I don't care if you're their father. Like, you are destroying our lives more than your own by doing this kind of thing. So yeah,
because she was in total disbelief when who presented these allegations to her originally. Was it the FBI?
Yeah, it was the FBI.
Okay, they come to her and they say, hey, your husband is wrapped up in a copious amount of sexual assault cases at this boarding school. And she's in like total disbelief, right?
Yeah.
Or almost doesn't even
At first, she doesn't believe it.
Right.
Yeah.
She doesn't believe anything the FBI is saying.
Yeah, at first she doesn't believe it.
Because they were married. How long were they married for at this time?
For like 30 years, basically.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, they were together for like 30 years.
Right.
Yeah.
You think you know a guy, Yeah. And you just don't.
Yeah.
So she's totally denying these allegations. And then what was the first piece of evidence where she was starting to open her eyes to be like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the guy I married?
That's a great question, because when she got word about the allegations, like 90% of her didn't want to believe them and genuinely didn't.
Okay.
But like 10% of her, wanted to believe them, because she kind of like deep down, she like knew that, this stuff does happen, and
right.
And it's very possible, especially because of these other 67 boarding schools that were now at this time being outed by Spotlight.
And are these 67 other boarding schools, are they all in New England, and are they all related cases?
They're all in New England, and not all of them are related,
okay.
but there are a ton of similarities. Like it's one of these like sexual assault encounters or whatever you want to call them. All the kind of like I guess like all the details are very similar to like whatever or other random one you would pick out of that pile.
Right.
So yeah, I think. Sorry, where were we?
No, you were hitting it perfect. She's now turning the corner to being like, okay, hold on, my husband, who I've been married to for 30 years, isn't the guy I thought I knew. And who's breaking this? Is step by step? Is the FBI just continuing to like? I'm imagining like we're in the 80s. They have a big manila folder with all these like 8x11 sheets of paper with proof, and she's slowly sifting towards that. Is that what's happening, or is it all like he said, she said at this time?
It's kind of, so when the FBI come to her, it's like they have been building this case for 1 year. They've gotten, nobody knows like how many girls there actually were, but there were 5 that were coming forward.
Wow.
So there were 5 that like kind of like banded together and were coming forward.
Yep.
And they all had like their own testimonies. Like they didn't have any evidence basically, but they all had their own testimonies. So the FBI were like building this case, and the reason why they came to her is because they knew that she possibly had some evidence. So they kind of came to her a little bit late in the case.
The wife, and the wife has some evidence.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Yeah. So the wife, like, she didn't really want to believe it at first. So she kind of like held off on simply even talking to them.
Yeah.
But then as the case and her own relationship with her husband started to kind of like intensify and slowly break apart, little things started to kind of like come out of those cracks that were forming in their relationship. Things that she didn't know were actually like reality. One example, and it's a huge reason why she ultimately decided to help the FBI, is because he was cheating on her with his secretary.
Wow.
He was the headmaster of the school, his secretary.
Is this guy like, at that point, is it like a sex addict?
Total sex addict. Yeah.
Narcissist, sex addict, idiot.
Yeah, exactly. And all 3 of those things are tied into him having like an obsession for power. And it's not just like power in like career or even just like in everyday life. It's like power over the people that are closest to him.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It explains each piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Like has to have power over the students, has to have power over the secretary, has to have power over his wife.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
When they were going to couples therapy, did the therapist say, like, without identifying obviously what he's done, were there traits that were a little more, not want to say normal, but traits of a narcissist that people could be like, oh, okay. Like, I'm imagining people listening to this that might be in like rougher relationships.
Yeah.
And whose significant other, fingers crossed, isn't committing such a crime. But are there characteristics of a narcissist that are easy to spot?
Yeah, I'll give like a couple, because like first of all, I'm absolutely not like a licensed like psychiatrist or whatever. Like I don't want to be like telling someone something that's totally not true. But the woman like shared with me like this list. It's like this checklist that you can kind of check off to see if like somebody is a narcissist or somebody's a sociopath or a psychopath.
Tough as a narcissist sitting there, like, that doesn't even sound like me. It's ridiculous.
But that's like one of the things. So like somebody being like really, really defensive and not like I don't want to say like not showing remorse, but like somebody being really defensive and like flipping something on someone else is like a huge narcissistic trait.
Right.
So, for example, when this woman confronted her husband about like having these relationships with these teenage girls, his first reaction was to deny what she was saying. So he basically said, "That's not true. I don't know where you heard that. What's actually true is that, yeah, like I did hook up with them, but they were in their like early 20s, like a few years after I taught them in high school.
Jesus.
And the only reason why I did it is because like you were never around, like you were working all the time." And so it's just like, it's kind of a thing like with narcissists and sociopaths, like they don't take kind of accountability for anything negative that they do. And then as well as that, they tend to like emotionally feed off of people that are close to them. So I don't know the best way to articulate this, but it's like if whatever they can do to keep the people close to them extra close, they will do. And a lot of the time it's done through like, you know, finding like a partner who has very, very low self-esteem and kind of like keeping their self-esteem like cripplingly low.
Yep.
So that they kind of like depend on the narcissist. So like they feed off like dependency and it kind of like emotionally like regenerates them. So like that's why like in relationships like it's really hard to tell if you're in a relationship with like a guy or a girl like this, could be anyone.
Yeah.
But it like specifically if you're a woman and you're in a relationship with a guy who is a narcissist, like it's probably going to be really hard to tell.
Yeah.
But usually it's just like, you know, there's no, I guess, like there's no consistency in their emotions either.
Yeah.
It's like it's like an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I'm sure you know some people who've been in relationships kind of like this.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure they're not going around like assaulting like high school students.
Right.
But like it is like a relatively common thing. It just depends, like there are varying degrees for how bad it can be.
I'm seeing so we have a larger female demographic, and I can imagine whoever's listening to this right now in their car, at the gym, walking the dog, they're like, Kyle actually acts just like that. You know, I think this episode might cause a lot of fights in relationships.
I hope not.
Kyle's actually pretty much known to flip the script on me a lot. Maybe he's a narcissist. This is scary stuff, you know?
Yeah, it is. And like I said, I mean, there are varying degrees. Like sometimes like you do it without even knowing.
Right.
But especially if like you're just like a naturally defensive kind of person.
Yeah.
But just like the main thing with people like this is just that like if they simply cannot take accountability for anything that they do, no matter how destructive it is, chances are they like are a sociopath who like can't really like feel those kind of feelings.
I don't know if this is just me drunk off your Irish accent. You have an amazing way of articulating what you're trying to say.
Thank you.
Know? Like I feel like with my accent, like everything I with my accent, with my, you know, my tone of voice, anything I say that could come off like trashy, you could say the same sentence and it'd be elegant, you know? Like say I'll take a double cheeseburger, please.
I'll take a double cheeseburger, please.
That is, say, let's go to Walmart.
Let's go to Walmart.
It sounds so elegant, doesn't it? Oh, say, I love NASCAR.
I love NASCAR.
That is, I feel like we're at like Oxford University. Wow. Yeah, anything you say in that accent is just beautifully said, you know?
Thank you.
Unbelievable. Okay, so the wife, back to the book here.
Yeah.
The wife she is working with the FBI because she finds out about the affair with the secretary. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's like kind of like a catalyst. Or like, no, rather that's like the tipping point.
Okay. When she's like, you know what, this guy definitely is the guy I married, and the FBI might be correct, so I will start to work with them. That's her like thought process?
Yes. Yeah. And I don't want to make it seem like the only reason why she decided to work with the FBI is because she was personally slighted.
Right.
But it was more so just like in like the way like the timeline of the story overall it was just like, it was building up to something like this. Like, it was like, that's why it's called Death by a Million Papercuts. It means she was the one who said it to me. I asked her about her marriage to her husband, and the first thing she said was, being married to this guy was like death by a million papercuts. So this was her millionth papercut. Like, finding out that he had been cheating on her for all these years, like, that was like her final papercut. That's when she really started to bleed.
Right.
You know, metaphorically, of course.
Right.
Like, that's when she really started to bleed. So, it was more so just like, that was the 1 millionth papercut. Couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Fuck this guy. Let's go do this.
And we can leave this somewhat of a cliffhanger too, but what, like, this case is progressing through time. Does justice get served here? Is this an unsolved case?
So,
What, you know what I mean?
yeah, I've no problem spoiling this because I think,
I didn't know how. Yeah.
no, yeah, because I think I don't want to say the fun in reading the story because it's like such a grim story, but like it's kind of like the way I wrote it is kind of like Gone Girl, so it's real like, you know, it's real like kind of like thrilling and shit. And there's like a turn at every corner, and it's also like a bad bitch protagonist, like who's fucking gonna kick ass. Like,
love a good bad
girls
bitch.
like love this story because like
Yeah.
it's so relatable, and like it's not like they're my words because I wrote it, but it's like it's this woman's like real life. So
Right.
I was just doing her due diligence. But sorry, what was your question again? I was getting
As
fired
the
up.
case is, that was beautifully said. You're on fire. As the case is progressing,
Right.
does justice come to light here, or is this a? I guess it's still a sad ending, obviously.
Yeah.
But does this man just get away with these crimes?
Unfortunately, he does.
Really?
Yeah, and that's what's really fucked up about it too. But that's why like people get really fired up reading it, is because it is a true story.
Right.
He gets away with it, and he gets away with it because of the boarding schools. Like, they protected him,
Oh,
and they sent him to
interesting.
another boarding school in South America. So he's
Really?
still teaching kids and shit. I don't know if
Holy
he's
hell.
I don't know if he's like, you know, hooking up with kids anymore. I don't
Right.
think he did that even like later on in his years, which is
Right.
like slightly earlier on in his career as like a educator.
Right.
But he got away with it.
Wow.
Yeah, and most of these guys did. Most of these guys in a Spotlight report like got away with it.
Really?
Unless they were specifically mentioned in the Spotlight report, the person who did these things or people who did these things like probably got away with it.
And why is that? Because from the boarding school's perspective, if this gets out, no one's going to want to go to that boarding school anymore.
Yeah, it's a bad look for the boarding
Right.
school, and you basically hit the nail on the head. Like
It's just, that's crazy to me, because you would just think like whoever's making, whether that's the dean of students or the president, whoever's making those calls, like where is like the moral boundary there from like okay, if this story comes out, yes, we might not profit anymore as a school, you know, but like this guy would, you know, get what's coming to him.
it's horrible. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, and there definitely are like a ton of good people at boarding schools. Like to research this book, like I spoke with so many like kids who went to boarding schools. A lot of them had like kind of fucked up stories.
Really?
Yeah, like really surprisingly. But a lot of them had like an amazing experience at boarding school. Yeah, it's definitely not everywhere. But just like if you contain everything to this like one Spotlight report, of course everything's going to be like really grim and like miserable and horrible. If you contain everything to these schools that the Spotlight report was about, and if you go even deeper to the shit that like wasn't uncovered because they didn't have the evidence to uncover it,
Right.
you know, there is a little bit of subjectivity to it. Just like my story, it's like slightly subjective because it's from one person's perspective.
Right.
But you have to think like, why would somebody make this up? And second of all, how could so many people be involved? And have this be like a fake thing? So
How's the wife feel like coming to present day? Is she just like, I assume at the time she was, did this go to trial at all or no trial at all?
I don't think it ever ultimately went to trial. There were definitely lawsuits, and there are definitely still some things going on with like a ton of these cases, like not just like the one that this book is about. But it never went to trial. I don't think. Yeah.
Is she irate? Like, did you ever follow up with her kind of post writing this book?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, she's like an absolutely unbelievable woman. Like, she was so game to write this book. She, if you can believe it, like she wouldn't like slander his name unnecessarily when we were speaking. So she would just give me the facts.
Wow.
Like, yeah, and she wouldn't be like, yeah, like this fucking piece of shit. Like, yeah, he wouldn't even like go out and like buy us like takeout when whatever.
Right.
Like she never like slandered his name. She only gave me the facts, which I really, really respect about her.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then even to this day, like she's just trying to like get on with her life and like be a mother.
Right.
Of course,
she's a mother of two.
Yeah, and of course she's going to be pissed off like here and there, like
Totally.
there are gonna be bad days, but for the most part she's just trying to be optimistic and like get on with her life.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's
Yeah.
insane. Where it's on Amazon.
Yeah.
Is that right? Do you have a website as well where this book is sold?
No, I do not. So for now it's just on Amazon.
Okay.
It's just on Amazon. I think in the next like 2 months I will have released a true crime podcast series based on it as well.
Here we go.
Yeah, so there'll be some like audio version of it too.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's the plan. But for now, it's just the book and it's just on Amazon.
And you're a busy dude, from my understanding. You have the book out.
Yeah.
But then you're also going a little different direction here, back to your childhood dreams, right? Back to the movie industry.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. What's happening in that scope?
Yeah, I recently, so in the last like 2 years, myself, my buddy Connor Hallway, who's also from Boston, he owns a production company called Golden Deer Productions.
Golden Deer. Why do I... He sent me a shirt before.
Yeah, I've seen you wear it.
I should have worn
in a
it
video
today.
before.
I have that shirt.
I should have let you know.
Wow. If I put that together, I have that. It's, how all guys have a t-shirt drawer. That shirt is sitting right. I can see it right now. Blue shirt. It's in gold, the writing.
Yeah. He's
Holy hell.
Yeah, he's like my like business partner and one of my great buddies out in LA. But we met in Boston.
Yep.
And like 2 years ago, he and I wrote like this massive feature-length script. Basically, it's like a dragons movie, but it's like really unique. It's kind of like a comedy.
Dragon Ball Z, or more like what was the ice wall? Game of Thrones.
Kind of more like Game of Thrones. It's like
Okay,
medieval.
here we go.
Yeah, it's like medieval comedy. It's like really stupid humor.
Yeah.
But it's like also like a really like genuine like action thriller as well. Like there's a ton of action. Like every single scene, there's something going on.
Let's go.
Traditionally, it would be a really high budget film, but it's really exciting because we're starting to work on it right now.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yep, we're like currently going through a stage of funding. We're using Kickstarter to, I think, get 60K to do like a 15-minute film version of this, and then from that we're going to try expand into this like 2.5 hour long kind of like mammoth dragons film. It's going to be awesome.
Do you need any voiceovers for dragons perchance? I don't know if you heard my dragon impression.
Can I hear it now? Because we actually do.
This is a dragon flying into battle against other dragons. Okay. Your thoughts there? Could I get a role, do you think? A cameo?
Connor, we're going to have to talk to Kevin
Think it
about
over,
getting
Connor.
into this movie.
Imagine that. Imagine in-flight big dragon. Could be great.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's way better than I thought.
I'm here, So
yeah, but it's wicked. Yeah, it's wicked exciting. It's like the story is just so funny. It's like it's something people are gonna be like really entertained with. It's not gonna be like you sit down and you're like locked in watching like Gladiator, which is like an awesome movie. But it's you leave that film and you like want to cry.
Yes.
The ending's so sad, and like this is like medieval time comedy. Like you're gonna leave that cinema like laughing your ass off. Yeah.
I could get stuck. I'm almost hoping there's imagine if I had a huge Lord of the Rings craze like as a kid, as those like trilogies came out, and then just recently I got back into Lord of the Rings heavy. Like if I could be orc number 308, I would have been pumped. You know what I mean? Just like in the crowd chanting, would have been through the roof.
Yeah.
But if there's like any movie or like if there was like a dragon show almost,
Yeah.
I'd watch 10 seasons. If Yellowstone could, potentially do 10 seasons of that like they did with Yellowstone.
Yep.
You'd have a day one subscriber right here.
Yeah.
That stuff gets me going.
Yeah.
That's exciting, man. Wow. What's the production side of that look like? Like, is a lot of it, so your partner in this, Connor, right?
Yep. Connor.
He is out in LA. And to shoot something like this, do you rely on do you go big network? Like, do you go to like Warner Brothers Studios, or is this something you can produce like potentially like maybe a room a little bigger than this with like green screens and lighting and stuff like that?
Yeah, we're gonna produce this independently.
Wow, let's go.
Yeah, so it's like really ambitious. Like whoever is listening to this, and if they work in film, they're gonna be like, "There's no fucking way."
Yeah.
You're gonna be able to get that done. But we have a lot at our disposal. So one of the consultants on our project is the guy who made House of Dragon.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and then one of our other consultants is like the dude who wrote Kung Fu Panda.
No way.
Yeah, so like we have like really good people in our corner.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily like boots on the ground, like operating with us like every day, but they're telling us what we have to do.
Right.
As well as that, we have a fantastic director who also does like VFX work himself. And he's a dude from Puerto Rico. His name's Alex. He's a fantastic director. He has hooked us up, and Connor too has hooked us up with like a dragon animator in Spain.
Oh, wow.
Who's doing it for really cheap, and he's currently working on the dragons, and they look pretty fucking awesome. They look pretty cool. So like you're able to do these things for cheap. You just need to have like the will.
Yeah, and the right partners.
Yeah, and the right partners.
Yep.
So we're all doing our part. Like I wrote it, so it's, you know, the screenplay is like put in place, and now I'm kind of just like producing in the sense that whatever Connor needs done that he can't physically do himself, and if I have the free time, I will go do it.
Gotcha. Wow. And do you guys work on this full time? On the production side?
No, well, so Connor's definitely working on this full time.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like stepping into working into it full time.
Okay.
Writing definitely is a full time
Yeah, I
thing.
can only imagine how time consuming that is.
Very time consuming, but I finished the script like months ago, so I've had like a bunch of time to like work on other stuff.
Okay.
Which is great. But now that production is kind of, you know, it's coming up soon. It's probably gonna really start happening in July.
Right.
We are definitely gonna be like boots on the ground, like working on this like every day.
What's timeline look like? Like from, let's say you started filming in July, how soon does this motion picture actually come to life?
Yeah, great question. I think it'll take us like a week to shoot.
No way,
but
that fast?
It's only going to be like a 15-minute
right.
firstly.
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
because
gotcha.
we're doing, it's called like a proof concept.
Yep.
And then from there, you know, we show that to people, and if they're like, we like this,
Right.
here's $10 million to make like the 2.5 hour one.
Yeah.
You know, that's the goal. And this is how like a lot of people get their films made anywhere. It'll be like a week of filming, if I'm not mistaken. We will either be shooting it in Boston or Puerto Rico, because the director's from Puerto Rico.
Okay, yeah.
It all just depends where we can get the best like deals on things.
Right.
And then after that, it's really just up to like our post-production team, how quick they can like, you know, like edit this so that everything looks like convincing, basically. Because like working with dragons on like a low budget scale is like kind of hard. Like it can look really stupid.
They're real dicks, let me tell you. Those dragons, difficult to work with, am I right?
Yeah, well, we don't want it to look like Sharknado. Like we want it to like looks like, you know, as close as we can to like a really professional looking thing. So
maybe Big Night can hook it up. Maybe dragons fly into the Grand. You know, it's 1:30 a.m. Dragons just DJ Hurley's DJing. We might be able to get the budget down in Boston here over Puerto Rico, right? We could probably hook it up.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
16 venues, 21 venues with Big Night. A lot of spots, a lot of options for dragons to invade, party, whatever they want to do. You know,
Lovely.
That is wow. That's incredible, man. Well, I'm excited. You were literally the first author we've ever had on the show. First, I guess Charles has been on here before, so technically we've had a production-ish guy in here. You know, shout out Charles. Okay, but yeah, first author of the show. This is like, for us, this is groundbreaking stuff.
Love it. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, and keep, you know, hey, if you need a dragon number 4, you let me know.
Dragon number 1.
Oh,
Kevin.
here, you heard it here first.
How could we put you down to number 4?
Oh, Dragon number 1 in theaters potentially soon. Hopefully coming to a theater near you. Am I right? Hell yeah. Where can everyone find you? Let's plug you up on all your socials. The book one more time, Death by Million Papercuts.
Yeah, so it's really just Instagram. I don't really use like much else, but my Instagram is Dunne, Dunne, period, Cillian, Cillian.
It is the most Irish thing I've ever heard. It's incredible.
Dunne.Cillian.
The accent is phenomenal. You know, this is great. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. I know you have a flight to catch.
Yes, sir.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is No Love Podcast. Hugs and kisses. Love ya.